Hello, everybody, and welcome to Scholars in the Spotlight, the show where you get to hear first-hand insights, tips, and tricks from students that won this year's WWDC Scholarship. Joining us today, we have an 18 years old computer and cognitive science student from California, with 3 published apps on the App Store and more to come. Developer of Mirrorly, winner of the 2020 Swift Student Challenge, please welcome Sai Kambampati. Welcome, Sai, and thank you for being here with me today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's a pleasure.
Yeah, same, man. So, why don't we start with your submission? The submission this year was called Mirrorly. Why don't you give us an introduction to the project and how it works?
Yeah, sure. When I got the announcement that Apple was doing the Swift Student Challenge, I really didn't have any idea planned beforehand, but I just knew that I wanted to build it using Swift UI. And I also knew I kind of wanted it to be related to something that all of us are going through. I mean, after all, this is the Worldwide Developers Conference. Since we were, I think, about 2 or 3 weeks into quarantine by then, I decided to build a self-reflecting journal as my submission, and that's kind of what Mirrorly became. It's a completely 100% Swift UI app that lets you reflect on your emotions and just lets you jot down your thoughts or maybe capture something you're feeling, or you can even like doodle something you might want to based on how you're feeling.
Oh yeah, that's great. That's awesome. It looked like a very complete app, a very polished project.
Yeah, most years when I submit something, I kind of want to give the reviewers a full submission of almost like a full app so they kind of can play around with all the features and take up that 3 minute time. And with Merely, I was able to accomplish that, and it was pretty fascinating. And most years when I like create a submission, I always have a plan like over the summer to release it as an app, but it's never happened. But luckily this year, I've had enough time to polish my playground and turn it into an app. So it'll be coming this fall, and I'm pretty excited about that.
Oh, that's really cool. Like seeing the project finalized as an app released on the App Store. That's great.
Yeah.
So good luck on that. So yeah, I've seen that Mirrorly, as well as most of your other projects, have a very big focus on AI, right?
Yeah, AI is kind of a big passion of mine, and especially since Apple released Core ML and the natural language framework, it's never been easier to include such high level technologies into your apps. And that's actually like one of the driving components behind Mirrorly was how it relies so much on Core ML and natural language. So, for example, within the journal entries of Mirrorly, NLP is used to like analyze the sentiment of your journal entry, and that way you can kind of like detect the emotion of your journal entry, and when you look back upon it, you can kind of see how you've progressed over time and how your emotions have hopefully gotten better over time. And also with Mirrorly, I wanted the playground to be something special and not just not just a journal app. And so I decided that the best way to do that was to include Core ML into it. So as humans, we like to stay informed and we know what to expect, right? So I figured, why don't we apply this to our own emotions? And that way we can stay proactive with our actions and how our feelings influence that. And if you knew that today is a day where you could potentially feel stressed, then I'm sure you do everything you can to kind of de-stress yourself and keep yourself surrounded by positive energy. So that's where Core ML came in. I surveyed a bunch of my friends and family, and I was able to gather data and kind of develop a machine learning model using Keras and TensorFlow that predicts your emotions based off information like your gender, your age range, and the day of the week. And what I was most happy about was using Core ML3's personalized model feature, which would constantly take in a user's input and adjust the model so it would be more personalized to you. And that's actually something that was reflected in my playground, where you can see how the model changes by adjusting the parameters in the profile page.
Oh yeah, that's great. Core ML is giving us a lot of this technology, like to play and to expand our apps,
Hmm.
and like having this applied to mental health. Mental health is very big.
Yeah, mental health is pretty critical, especially during a time like this. So I'm glad I was able to come up with something, and hopefully this fall it helps someone, use it. It's certainly helped me.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure that it will be very useful for a lot of people, like to have this kind of insights into their mental health, right?
Hmm.
Yeah, I've seen that you released like a test flight, merely app for collecting data for training the model. Is that right?
Yeah, so that was part of when I was refining Merely over the month of June, that was one of the apps I released. The data I used to create the playground, it was kind of a rough machine learning model. It wasn't very accurate. So to help with that, I decided to crowdsource the data to improve the model. So back in June, a couple weeks ago, I released a very simple app to help users. It would collect their data and would, of course, like they would be completely informed of what it was collecting, and it would be anonymized. So that way they wouldn't, they know that their privacy is safe, their information is secure, and I'm not using it for anything that I'm not supposed to be using it for. So that's been coming along really good. I was just looking at the data, and so far I think we have enough data to start building a trainable model.
Oh, that's awesome, man. Yeah, like outsourcing is very cool, like for building this kind of models and all of that. Like I actually participated in the app test flight, so
Oh, really? Thank you for that. Yeah. Yeah,
yeah,
thank you.
yeah, no problem, man. Great. Yeah, you said that the very core of Mirrorly is like core ML and a lot of features that have been released in previous years, like the personalized model.
Hmm. Yeah.
That's very cool. And like, what about the other apps that you have built? Like, they also include a lot of AI, like the Views for app.
Yeah, Views 4 has certainly improved upon the years. So Views is my news application, and it was one of the first apps. I think it was the first app I released to the App Store almost two and a half years ago. And over time, I've kind of been perfecting it. And a couple months ago, I released Views 4, which was the the next version of this app, and it relies heavily on machine learning. So one of the ways where it's used is right now what it one of the ways ML is used is it takes a news article and it summarizes it to condense information. That way, users can be informed of articles around them. Because one of the biggest problems with news is that in our busy world, everyone really doesn't have time to read long articles. So ML uses this with the help of machine learning. I summarize news articles to present them to readers in a pretty concise information. And in an upcoming version, it's going to be using natural language processing to extract keywords from articles and display recommended articles. So the learning and the reading never stops.
Oh, yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, like we live in such a busy world.
Yeah,
When you come across a long, like 4 or 3 paragraph news, you say like, "Oh, I will read it later. I'm right now doing anything else."
absolutely. Yeah.
So yeah, that like having that concise information is very useful. So this is your third time winning the scholarship, right?
Yeah. I'm just as surprised as well.
Yeah, that's really awesome. So like with all the experience that you have, like what's some good tip you could give to future students who may want to participate in next year's scholarship?
Yeah, sure. So, this is a question I get most often, and the one answer I always give is, despite your experience, I think you should definitely apply for it, because not only is it a chance to something that's pretty amazing. I mean, getting invited by Apple to their conference, but having that time crunch of 2 weeks to build an idea that you have to come up with, design, create, develop, and then send it off to them is really reflects real world work environments. You have to be prepared to switch on a dime, and you gotta be very passionate about what you're working towards. So some other tips I have is that too often people think that there's a perfect idea. Maybe if I put in all these impressive features like Core ML or AR Kit, then I'm guaranteed a win. But I don't think it necessarily works like that, because the whole point is for Apple to see your creativity and to help you focus on an idea that you're passionate about. So if you're just trying to pile on a bunch of features that may not have any relevance to what you're submitting, I'm pretty sure Apple will see that. And you don't necessarily have to use Apple's newest technologies, but that certainly helps having because Apple also wants to see how you're using what they're providing for you. And I guess most importantly is don't give up. I guess if you don't get in, I don't think you should take that as a symbol of your developing skills. I think rather you should just try to see what could be improved upon and work all year and apply the next year again.
That's some great advice, really. Like just submit, like try to build something that you're passionate, that shows your creativity, and yeah, keep trying every year.
Mhm.
So, like this year, like we keep talking about this in the podcast, but this year was the virtual event, the online event.
Yeah.
You actually participated as a scholarship in like 2017 and 2018
Mhm.
in the physical event. Like, what can you tell us about the experience of being a scholar, like flying in and being there?
Yeah, so this WWDC was definitely because of coronavirus. It was a rather different, unique scholar experience. So I think that, and what I'm really happy about is that a lot of the opportunities that are normally not provided to most developers were provided, such as the hands-on labs and the access to sessions immediately. I think that was pretty cool. But I certainly did miss some of the perks that in-person WWDC has provided to scholars. My in 2018, I think was is probably my favorite WWDC because it was when Apple took the scholars to their campus, and this was back when Steve Jobs Theater was like very recently built. I think it was like 3 months into being open, and we were some of the like first people to actually be in there. And some of the Apple engineers over there told us that like even some of the Apple engineers that work at the company haven't been in the theater yet, and that was something to be really impressed by. So that along with all the perks you get with an in-person WWDC, you get to meet people who are just like you. You get to definitely interact with engineers much more frequently than an online WWDC. So the perks are definitely there. So like I said, like never stop applying if you can. It's definitely worth it.
That's so cool. Like a lot of very exclusive experiences that happen during the physical WWDC,
Absolutely.
especially as a scholar, right?
Yeah.
A lot of experiences that, like, if you go as a regular dev, you might not have.
Yeah, and even in fact, I tend to like how Apple really shows their commitment towards the scholars. In during a normal in-person WWDC, there's these lounges where developers can kind of just kick back, relax, code, or like talk to other developers who are sitting nearby them. And then there would be this like really exclusive lounge for scholars only, and they would have like these Apple engineers there making sure you're a scholar, and it was definitely a good experience.
Oh, that's great, man. Like hearing you talk about it, like gives me a lot of energy, and like I really want to participate next week or next year. I mean,
Yeah, absolutely, you should go for it. Yeah, there's not much to lose by applying, really. You should definitely apply, and I'm sure you'll get in. I mean, you're pretty talented. I've been looking at your stuff. Yeah, and most importantly, like even if there's an over limit and Apple doesn't give you one, it's not like you're forbidden from ever entering again. In 2019, I applied again as I thought 2019 would be my third time, but I was actually rejected in 2019, and I won't lie, it was pretty disappointing. And I even said like, okay, I think I've had enough WWDCs. I think I'll stop applying for a while. But then 2020 came, and then the submission came, and I said, there's not much to lose here. If if I get rejected again, what have I to lose? And it's nothing really. So I applied again, and I'm glad it paid off.
yeah, for sure, man. I mean, it's free to apply, right? Like,
hmm
and even if you don't get it, you get a lot of experience, and those 2 weeks, like coding your submission, they are really great for you.
Yeah, it's definitely a hustle, but it pays off.
Yeah, for sure. And this year we had like a different schedule, right? Like all the days were really moved. Like
Yeah, yeah. Normally, I think 2016 was the last WWDC that occurred during the third week of June, and then 2017 to 2019, it took place during the first week of June in San Jose, no less. Earlier, it was in San Francisco, and I think because of all the scheduling conflicts and just having to record all the sessions beforehand, I think Apple had to push it to the third week of June. But it definitely didn't degrade the experience, and it was still pretty good.
Yeah, I mean the WWDC this year was really great. Like you could see like they put a lot of work into filming and editing and all of that.
Absolutely, yeah, I was really impressed by that.
And the scholarship challenge usually gets announced around March.
March, yeah, March.
Yeah, and this year it was like delayed. Like
Yeah, late April or early May, I think. I didn't know it was so long ago.
yeah. We talked with some students before. Like they were like surprised. Like we didn't know if there were going to be a scholarship this year or not.
Yeah, yeah, I was just as surprised. I was all but sure there wasn't going to be a scholarship this year, and we just have to wait for next year. But I'm glad Apple took the initiative to kind of step out and go the extra mile, and let scholars have their chance this year too.
Yeah, for sure. And like they keep showing that they have a lot of support for the scholars, right?
Hmm.
That's great, man. So why don't we steer up for other projects that you may have? Like you're now working on the Mirrorly app, but I think that you have been playing with SwiftUI a lot. And
Yeah.
yeah, what are you working on?
Yeah, this summer has definitely been one of my busiest as an iOS developer. Just, I think, based on everything Apple's announced and with Swift UI nearing its almost like robust set of features. Swift UI is like more mature than it was a year ago, and all the features they've had have kind of reignited my love for this new declarative framework. And so to talk about my projects, yeah, as I mentioned earlier, Mirrorly is nearly finished. There's just a couple of minor tweaks to make, couple of bugs to fix internally, and then I'll be releasing the beta in next month, almost in a couple weeks. So I'm pretty excited about that. So yeah, keep your eyes open for that on Twitter, I guess. And I'm hoping to release the app as part of the iOS 14 launch, which might be, I think, mid-September if they go as they normally do, because normally iOS versions get released, or the major versions get released around the middle of or end of September. So I'm hoping Merely can be um, released by then. Apart from that, I'm working on updates to views for the news application, and it's going to be including, and these were just changes I had even before WWDC, but I'm adding, of course, the recommended articles feature I talked about earlier. I'm adding a new tvOS app and making improvements to the current watchOS app. And I'm based on like everything that's been announced, I'm hoping to add app clips and some widgets to the app as well. That would be really interesting to add. And I guess my big app of this summer would be, apart from Merely, is going to be Accomplish, which is a to-do app. Well, initially, I wanted it to be a to-do app, but I realized that the market for reminders apps or just like tasks apps was just so competitive. I decided to change it into Goals app, a goal setting app. So it's, as with Merely, Accomplish is built with almost 100% Swift UI, and it uses iOS 4, or I should say Xcode 12's new multi-platform option. So the app is going to be available on iOS, iPadOS, and macOS, and I hope to finish it within the next 1 or 2 weeks. It basically kind of rather than have you finish different tasks, it has you set an overarching goal that you want to accomplish. So, for example, if I could take your case, say one of your goal is to apply for next year's WWDC scholarship, then that would be your goal, and then underneath you would have tasks like learn more Swift, practice Swift, release some apps, and talk to others, and just some of the stuff that I followed when I tried to apply for WWDC. So that's kind of that what the app basically is. And something that was really neat about building the multi-platform app was that previously, to build a Mac app, I would hit the checkbox, UI kit for Mac or Mac Catalyst, and it would utilize all of the frameworks UI kit has to offer. But with building the multi-platform app, I had to rely on AppKit, which is something I've never really had to do before because I've never really worked with macOS development. But within like the past 2 weeks of me making this app, I've learned so much about making a Mac app that I wouldn't have had done any other way. So I'm really glad that Accomplish is kind of shaping out to be the way it is right now.
Oh, that's awesome, man. Like, you have a lot of work for the following weeks and months. Like,
Yeah,
you have a lot of different projects.
yeah, absolutely.
And yeah, we keep hearing this like learning through examples, and I think that you are really practicing that.
Yeah, it's definitely something to look for, I guess. When I'm learning something, I try to, well, in my case, I've noticed that I learn best by practicing what I'm learning. And so with that in mind, with Swift UI especially, it's such a new framework that there's so much to explore and there's not a whole lot of documentation on it. With iOS development, you've got the past like 5 to 6 years of Swift, plus all of the previous years that used Objective C. But with building Swift UI apps, you really only have almost a year's worth of stuff. And of course, the Stack Overflow community and the Apple developer forums, of course, has never been more vibrant, I should say. But it's definitely been a challenge and trying to explore what you want to build just by either going through the WWDC sessions or maybe talking to someone that who's done some pretty impressive work with Swift UI, that's something to definitely keep in mind.
Yeah, for sure. There is a lot of problems, I mean, that like you will face when building an app or an example that you wouldn't have thought if you are reading a tutorial, and that gives you a lot of learning experience, right?
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah, and like you have a lot of work, like you mentioned, like 3 projects that you are maintaining or either like planning to release soon.
hmm
And you're also like pursuing a double major.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Like, you're on computer science and on cognitive science.
Yeah. It's yeah. I love learning. Yeah.
How are you doing that? Like, I
Um.
imagine they are very connected. Like, I have never heard of cognitive science.
Yeah, so cognitive science is a very new, I shouldn't say new, the field has been around for a long time, but it's slowly gaining popularity. So cognitive science is a lot like neuroscience, except instead of learning about the brain from a biological perspective, it's more connected to a computational perspective where we try to where we try to understand how does the human brain work, and we try to see if that can be applied towards technology. And like I've said dozens of times, AI is one of my biggest passions. So when I heard of cognitive science, I really wanted to pursue that as a major. And it's double majoring is definitely it's pretty challenging. And right now, during summer when I'm on summer vacation, that's when I try to get most of my iOS development work done so during the school year I can focus a little bit more on my studies and maybe just release minor updates to my app. But yeah, I'm pretty excited about what I'm learning, and I really hope that I can definitely bring it to my apps and whatever other programs I create.
Well, man, that's awesome. Like, I see that you have a lot of goals for the future, and yeah, I think that you're going to be great at both.
Mm. Oh, thank you. Yeah,
So, so yeah, keep learning, I guess.
yeah, thank you.
So why don't we round things up with your? I mean, I guess I can. I already know the answer, but I want to know your favorite new feature announced at WWDC.
That's that's gonna be tricky because there was a lot Apple announced this year. I don't know if I can pick a particularly new favorite feature. There was so much that I haven't even gotten around to try yet. But I'll tell you what I was really interested by. So I guess right at the top of the list would be WidgetKit. That was something I played with literally the next day after WWDC, and it was a lot of fun building widgets because WidgetKit is entirely based in Swift UI. All the development has to be done using that framework, so it really enhanced my skills there with Swift UI. I also really loved app clips. I haven't played around with that as much, but I hope to implement it in one of my apps. And I think definitely building a mini version of your app in under 10 megabytes is it shouldn't be too bad if you rely on Apple's frameworks like CloudKit for database. But if you rely on databases like Firebase, which is something Vue used to rely on before I made the transition to CloudKit, then that would definitely be a challenge for you. Um, Apart from that, Core ML got some really nice enhancements. I really liked the two biggest features, I should say, of Core ML, which was that you can now encrypt models to preserve privacy, and you can also deploy new versions of the model over cloud, which helps in not having to release an update every time you want to update your model. And of course, multi-platform Swift UI, as I've talked about with Accomplish, that's definitely been easier in helping iOS developers build macOS apps. And I guess a pretty low-key feature would be the new logging APIs that Apple's announced. Um, I'll admit that as a developer, when I try to debug, I put something like print hello in between my code to see what's running properly. But there's a new logging API that makes it really easy to stream logging messages to the console, and you can get a clearer picture of what's happening. And that definitely helps with app debugging. So yeah, I can't really pick a new feature, but there's so much that was pretty amazing to me.
Oh, yeah, that's awesome, man. I can see that you're like learning like a lot of fields at the same time, like you're on Core ML and Swift UI, and that's
Yeah.
really great. Yeah, I'm personally like I am true personally of the print statement debugging
Mhm.
kind.
Uh-huh.
So yeah, I will have to try out the new login features as well.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. It's pretty intuitive once you like start using it. Then I'm like going through all my old code and like removing all the prints here and there and just kind of replacing it with the logging.
Yeah, yeah, that's great. Well, Sai, like thank you very much for being here with me today.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's my pleasure truly to be here.
Yeah, for sure. Like it was a great talk, and I think that it will help a lot of future students that may want to participate in
Yeah, I hope so.
this great challenge. Like we have to keep growing the community. Like not a lot of people know about the scholarship.
Yeah, the scholarship is definitely, surprisingly, it's not well talked about, but the Swift community is getting bigger every year, and it's being applied in more places, most recently in AWS Lambda. So I'm hoping to see more and more students take an interest. And Swift is great as if for someone who's looking to get into coding. So I hope that this helps someone if they're unsure about whether to apply for the scholarship. And the answer is you definitely should apply.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, that's it for today. I hope you have enjoyed it and that you learned something. Don't forget to follow the links in the description for Sai's contact info and to hear the latest news about the Mirror beta. Give us a follow on your podcast player of choice so you get notified when we release a new episode, and share the show if you think it might help someone else. I'm your host Valentino Cerruti. You can find me on Twitter as @microrex. This has been Scholars in the Spotlight, and I will see you in the next episode.